Welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation sales and marketing success stories. I'm Jennifer Carpus Romaine, Executive Director here at TMSA, a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in the transportation and logistics space. And I'm here today with Michelle LeBlanc, founder and CEO at Drop and Hook. She is one of our TMSA board members, and really happy to have you on the show today. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm good. Just
So
catching my breath after Elevate.
yes, that's what I was going to say. We just saw each other last week. My hair is a mess because I have yet to put on makeup since the show. But we saw each other last week, Elevate. Very exciting week. We got to celebrate TMSA's 100 years anniversary. So love being able to serve the industry for so long. Got to see a lot of great content, a lot of great networking. Curious, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the show?
So this is a great question because when I got back with my team on Monday, we had like a group call and we were all like, let's talk about let's do our debrief. What were your thoughts? So we're going to put out a blog with everybody from my team's thoughts, but this is also
Perfect.
fresh in my mind. So I feel like the biggest conversation that I kept having with everyone throughout the event, which is always funny to me. Every time I go to an event, it does always feel like there's some thread that keeps popping up. And the one this year really felt like a lot of people saying, how do I work smarter in my work, not just harder? Because I think in our industry right now, a lot of people are being asked to do even more things, like wear even more hats, just add stuff to their plate, and they're not necessarily getting additional resources to do those things. And also simultaneously, the market being what it has been for the last little bit, they're being asked to really look at the things that they're actually doing and say, are these working? Should we, if we are bringing in these new things, should we get rid of some of these older things that aren't working, or, reprioritize our efforts, or, just be more strategic in what we're attacking, or should we tear everything down and do a rebrand because it's not working, which I don't think that's the answer. I do think it's just the market for a lot of people. Some people maybe, sure. But I think that was the one conversation that I really kept having is a lot of people were coming to TMSA, to that community specifically, to have those conversations with other people that were in their same shoes of how are you doing it? How are you figuring out which things do you want to prioritize, and how can you kind of find new strategies to work smarter?
Yep, absolutely. And one of those things that was talked about is AI, which you did a session on. And it is this constantly evolving landscape there. What are some of your most important things that you think people should keep in mind when they're engaging with AI?
So yes, I did. And as you know, I redid my slides 4 times because even just in the time period
Yes.
that I was working on them, I felt like it was just constantly changing. And I think that I am somebody who's been having a lot of conversations with my clients about AI. And so I feel like by the time I was even getting there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of this constant hype cycle and talking about it. But I think the fact is that even though it is everywhere and everyone is talking about it, we haven't necessarily had the real conversations about, at least marketers haven't had the real conversations about how was this built and what is it really doing, and how can we use it strategically? Be smart about it. We can't just put our heads in the sand and be that's bad, because it can do a lot of really great things for us, to take things off of our plate that we don't necessarily want to be doing. And, I think the thing that I have learned when I'm evaluating AI tools is really to ask the question about what is this really looking at, and what is it really trying to do? Because AI tools are just that. They're tools that have been developed to do a specific task for us. So when you think about large language models, it's taking a lot of words in and trying to understand the connections between those words and how they work together. And whoever has programmed this tool is going to be making some inferences of their own about the meanings between things and teaching it to learn from what it's taking in. So it's like, it's really kind of interesting, because if you think about like teaching an employee, teaching a member of your team, the things that you choose to prioritize and what you teach them are going to change how they then go on to do their work and what they're coming out with on the other end. Like the processes you choose to build within your business are going to make your end result different. So I think like anytime anyone is evaluating an AI tool, that's really what you need to look at. I was looking at a social media tool recently that was like, we added AI hashtag suggestions where we're going to like put in hashtags on your social media posts. And I was like, oh, cool. So is it like going out and like looking at what are trending hashtags that are like relevant to this topic and like finding the ones that have like the most mentions and putting them in? Because that'd be really cool. I would love if an AI tool would do that. And they were like, no, it's just looking at like what the content of the post is and like picking some words based on that. And I was like, that's a lot less cool. I'm way less excited now. I'm sorry, sales rep that is demoing this to me. But like, I think my whole face just kind of went like, because that's really not a whole lot of value for me. Like I can just hashtag random words. That's not really the task at hand.
Yeah, I think it's about providing value. And like you said last week, there was a lot of conversations about how do we do more with less? How do we be most efficient? So AI tools or any tools should be helping our efficiency. It should be helping the team achieve something faster, more efficiently. And so that's what I always look at when I look at technology, is like, how is this actually assisting in the process, and making sure that we're talking to the team members who would be using that. Because had you not asked that question, you may have purchased that and then been like, guess what? This is going to help you hashtag. And they'll be like, okay, so it's kind of doing the things that we know how to do. How is that making us more efficient? And you would be like, you're right, I don't know. And so I think it's really important to be thinking about like, what does the tool actually do compared to what do we want it to do? How can it evolve? How can it grow? But what is it actually doing? And I think sometimes people forget that step. They get really excited about the bells and whistles and all of the things, and then it comes down to it, and we've invested in something that maybe isn't going to solve the problem that we're looking for.
Yeah. And it's very easy to be like chasing whatever the shiny new thing is. And I think we don't spend enough time actually looking at like, well, what are our real world processes today? What are the things that we're already kind of struggling with? Because maybe AI can do something to fix one of these, but we need to like define what the problem is first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And with that, like, we need to then measure and understand the ROI on our efforts and what we're doing. So what are some of your best tips for people to do that when they're assessing their marketing strategy, their marketing campaigns, or these new tools that they might be using?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like my approach to that question is the same thing. It's like, take the time at the upfront to really think about what it is that you want to measure. Like, what does success actually look like for whatever this campaign or this project that you're working on is? Just like take a beat to really define that before you ever even start to have this question about like, how are we going to actually then measure that success on that? Because that's, I mean, for Drop and Hook, that's like one of our key things when we start working with a new client, is to do a strategy at the upfront and get aligned about like, what are your actual goals for what you're trying to accomplish? And like what you're trying to accomplish might be like, we want to write blog posts, but really, I always then have to ask the like, why? Like, but why are you trying to write blog posts? Okay, you want to like get more people to your website. Okay, well, why do you want to get more people to your website? Like, what are they going to do once they get there? Oh, they're going to fill out a form to like request a quote for services. Like, okay, now finally we've gotten like 2 or 3 levels down, and that's the real, like, here's where the ROI is going to come from. And I think too many people stop at the like, well, we want reach on social media, and they don't ask themselves like, why do we want that reach? Like, what does that actually mean for our business? So that's my number one tip, is to just like be curious, keep asking those whys, and then use that to work backwards about really defining what your goals are. And ideally, I know it's not always easy, trying to then build the business processes on the back end to be able to tie activities like social media or blog posts or whatever it may be into like, how does this turn into an actual end result for us? Because I think that's the real thing that you want to be reporting on at the end of the day.
And how do you best track those campaign successes? So, like you said, I love that drill down. Like, okay, your goal is, oh, we want to have more of this activity, but why? What is that activity actually achieving? How do you then track the campaign success once you drill down and be like, okay, our actual goal is that we want to have more sales calls or more product demos or whatever that looks like? How do you track then those pieces, those activity pieces for those campaigns?
So that's like one of the reasons I super love digital marketing is that, like, even if you do set this end goal of like, well, we want sales, we want to increase sales, there are still all these other things that you can measure to get there, and constantly be like kind of tweaking if you're seeing where's the point along this, that this is not working, to still continue tracking towards that larger goal. So what I mean, the simplest answer to this question is like, I use HubSpot a lot for a lot of things. But it doesn't have to be that. There are a lot of like great native analytics tools that are out there. And frankly, you can do a lot of things in spreadsheets if that's like all you sort of have available. Really, it's knowing the things that you want to track and then finding a way to, sort of tag that information appropriately to measure back against this campaign. So, if you are that person that's like, I am going to have spreadsheets, I don't have a fancy tool, I'm not in HubSpot. I mean, like, I would argue it's surprisingly, affordable when you think about the time that it might save you. But you might put like UTM codes that include your campaign on any particular piece of content that is associated to that campaign, so that you can look at that. You might be looking at things like source data for how people are coming into your website. Is it from a particular social media channel? There's a lot of things where you might not have the perfect tool, but you can kind of look at like, oh, interesting, we had like a spike on this particular day. Well, let's go back and look at what happened on that day and make some hypotheses about what that might be, and then maybe use that insight to try to set up a test for a future scenario that maybe we are going to track a little bit better if we didn't have the things in place in the first place. So I think in an ideal world scenario, you have measurement tools set up that are able to capture that data for you, and you can kind of dig into and slice and dice that as much as you want, like as much as your own curiosity takes you down that road of kind of looking at, how can we get some insights out of this? But it really is ultimately, at the end of the day, like, the tools are just the tools. It's about that curiosity and having the interest to continue to dig into it, and understand what it is that you're looking at, I guess I would say also, because I think it's very easy to say like, well, our Google ads are the last thing that people did before they like converted on this form, so therefore the Google ads are working and nothing else is working. Let's throw it all out. And that's why I say, like, I love a tool like HubSpot, because being able to see like a full customer journey of like, well, it wasn't just the Google ad. They actually visited the website about 6 times before that, and they downloaded this piece of content, and then they, were an attendee at this event that we went to. I can see here that they were on this list that we imported of leads from that event. And, maybe they also had a conversation with the sales rep there. So I love a full funnel reporting.
I do too. I think it's really helpful. And then something I found really helpful back in my director of marketing days was I actually then, when we got new customers, I would call them and ask them where they heard about us or how they engaged with us, because it was a good like checks and balances to make sure that that information was accurate. And for the most part it was, but then there was a little things like, oh yeah, like say they said they went to an event. Okay, well, maybe we didn't have that whole list inside our CRM because it was a smaller event or for some reason, or every once in a while you'll get like, inside HubSpot, or at least like else, it'll be like found from offline sources. And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
what's that offline source? Like, how do I dig into that a little bit deeper? And so it helps you create a better understanding of your funnel too. Like
Yeah.
HubSpot, other tools, they let you see so much of that journey, but there's still ways to improve and to grow and to like check that. And so it seems so simple. Just be like, oh, hey, we're so happy to have you as a customer. Like, where did you find us? What did you respond to well? Like just simple things like that really helped, and helped the sales team understand too, like all of the things that happened before they had those conversations. So just something to think about too is like following up. Then when you get that customer, how are you engaging with them? How are you making sure that all of that work that you did do is part of your process and you're tracking that correctly?
Yeah, I had a client at one point that was running a billboard campaign, and they were like, "Well, how do we measure the ROI of a billboard campaign, right? Like this is not inexpensive. We know people are seeing it. Anecdotally, we've had people be like, "Hey, I saw your billboard," and like send us a text message of it, and that's exciting. People do love
Mhm.
to see their marketing messages that they worked on out there in the world, but like, okay, at the end of the day, like does this expense make sense? And we were like, well, you've got like a sign up form on the website. Can we just throw a field on there that says like, how did you hear about us? And like,
Mhm.
maybe not everybody's going to answer it. Maybe we're going to end up with some messy data because like people are, it was like a free text field. But at least let's start to see if we can get some insights from that. And it was like, oh, the billboard campaign, a lot of these people were converting from our Google ads, right? So if we had not had that level of like, oh, maybe we should ask them, it would have looked like these were all coming in from Google ads, and like I was running the Google ads, so like I could have been like, oh, well done me. But as it turns out, that was not like actually what people were thinking in their own heads as the place that they had first heard about this and they started their journey. So I've seen that work really well, like on the driver recruiting side of things as well, because like 9 times out of 10, it was like referral from a friend.
Mhm.
Somebody told me about your company, and that's so powerful. And there really isn't any way to measure that. You can give your drivers like a referral code and like maybe people put it in, but knowing that, then you could build a marketing strategy of like, how do we better empower our own people to be advocates for this company and give them the tools they need to like talk about it well and bring more people in, because that's a really valuable source for us.
Yes, we started doing that. How did you hear about us here at TMSA for our memberships and things, which has been really helpful for us to know that because, yeah, we see the traffic and the web traffic, people coming to the website, but what brought them there?
Hmm.
So it's simple. It's an open text field. So you get some interesting answers because it's not like a checkbox. So it's not super clean, but that doesn't mean that you can't find value in that. So great idea. Um,
Yeah.
as we talk about all these different metrics, things that people can add, one thing I would love to get your perspective on is like we just came from a conference of sales and marketing people. Everyone is talking that marketing sales language, but how do we convey what we do and talk to somebody who isn't a marketer, whether that's a boss or someone in a different department? I feel like marketing can be siloed a lot of the time. With sales, you bring in revenue and you can see that pretty linearly. There's so much that goes into it, but it's a language that people can see in a spreadsheet and understand or see in a chart. Marketing is a little bit different. So how do you encourage people how they talk to the non-marketers that need to get buy-in for marketing? How do they speak to them so they understand what's really going on?
Yeah, and I think that's like a big part of the reason that I landed in this place of really realizing like you have to go deeper and understand what somebody's inherent motivation is to then be able to give them back the thing that they really care about. And it's funny because I think as marketers sometimes we're really good at doing that for our audience, right? We're like, I'm going to build this audience persona. I'm super going to know this person, everything that they like, where do they hang out on the internet, what associations are they part of, right? And then we forget to do that within our own
Mhm.
companies when we're talking to other people in the company. And it's like, that wouldn't be hard work to do. It just, it wasn't in our job description, or it wasn't something that anyone ever like suggested to us in our careers. And then once you realize that, like I can market myself and my own work within my company, I think that's a super powerful thing. And it comes back to that kind of like knowing who you're talking to and what is going to be the most important to them. And, I think I love digging into the data and having all of these data points about we got the most impressions on this one. Oh, reels are like really performing well right now, or like we should be doing more carousels. The vast majority of people in your company like aren't going to care about that. They might like to come to you with ideas. Like if there's one thing I've learned working in social media, it's like everybody, because they probably do social media in their own life, has lots of ideas, and that's wonderful and lovely. Like the more ideas, the better. Let's bring them in. But that's the sort of stuff that can lead to you constantly being reactive and having to like put out all the fires all the time. So you have to then, refine that into like, what are the things that are actually going to be strategically important for us as a marketing department, for the company as a whole, and take your reporting then and the things that you are sharing out and turn it into that end result. So I think it's super important as marketers that we communicate to non-marketers within our organizations what it is that we're setting out to do. Like, I think any report should sort of start with like, here was our hypothesis. This is the scientific method. We had a hypothesis and we thought this and we decided we were going to do this. And then here's what happened. A few high level results. Ideally, we can communicate how those translate into some impact for the business. But, if our sales cycle is 18 months long and maybe we don't have a lot of control over some of the factors that go into that sales cycle, right? Like people are being told that their budgets are frozen right now, so they're not going to invest in new technology. Like you as a marketer can't control that. But what you can control is, well, we were able to get, this many leads, and here was the topic that performed best out of this campaign that people seem to really be caring about right now. Maybe here are some anecdotal insights or some key companies. I love having like a target company list or a target job title list. I would very much encourage anyone, if you work with sort of a sales team partner within your company, just go like ask those people for like, who is your hot target that you're going after right now? Because if you can then put that in your marketing, like we touched 6 people with this campaign that were from our target company list, suddenly that reporting becomes so much more powerful. And then I think the third component of that report is just, and what are we going to do next? Like, what does this all mean? Because I think sometimes we just like to be like, and here's the report, full stop. And people need to be brought all the way along on that journey of like, what is the moral of this story that we've learned, and what does it mean for the future? Because I think ending on that note gives people some reassurance that like, I have a plan in place. And, if you continue to come along with me on this journey, like, here's where we're going to go next. And that's something to be excited about. And I think that's something people are looking for in their day-to-day is like, what do I get to be excited about in this job?
I think that makes sense. And you mentioned like people are having their budgets frozen or they're in a really tight budget. And so kind of showcasing the data-driven decisions that you're doing that will help relay that story, that message through to the other parts of the team. Are there any other departments that marketing should be focusing on aligning with for best success, or making sure that they're telling those stories to them to then get buy-in for what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we work on some like employer brand marketing at Drop and Hook, and so one really great thing that I've seen come out of that is that like, even though we weren't necessarily hired to do this, one of the things that we were hired to do is like monitor like Glassdoor and Indeed reviews for one of our clients, and try to keep a pulse on like what are their ratings and like how are prospective employees seeing them out in the world. But we started gathering up that data and feedback and giving it back to our HR partners within the organization. And they actually were able to use that information to then go out to specific like local operating companies within their larger company and be like, hey, a lot of people during the onboarding process are saying they're not getting enough training. Like, what can we do to be more supportive of new employees when they're coming on board? Because we've spent all this time and energy trying to recruit them. Like, let's retain the people that actually showed up on day one and reduce our overall recruiting costs, because we can like just keep more people on board. And they were actually able within that organization to increase their retention statistics for that particular location, to the point where they were running Facebook ads every single month. And they were like, we have to turn these off because we don't actually need new hires anymore. And it's like, I just kind of like tricked myself out of work there. But like in the long run, I'm like, I'm really happy, because what I want for my clients is that they get that overall success for the business. And like, that's really what they needed. I'm not here to make money for Meta. So I think that, like talking to your local HR partners or anybody that kind of has an employee engagement role can be really valuable. If you're in more of a B2B organization, talking to anybody that's like customer support or customer success, or, just whoever is in charge of like answering your sort of complaints line, can be extremely valuable. I think it's important to communicate the things that you're doing as a marketer, but I think you should be going to talk to those people, because that gives you insights into like probably what things should you be doing next? What are the actual pain points that your customers are dealing with? I think honestly, like operations, and there's not a department within a company that I think marketers shouldn't be talking to, because I think like part of the job of marketers should be really understanding who their brand is in all ways, and what that means in all ways, in order to then do marketing as successfully as possible.
A lot of great tips and feedback from you, Michelle, as always. I have one last question for you, which is my favorite question to ask everyone, because it's the thinker. Things like you talk about marketing success and data and all those things all the time. I know you love HubSpot data. I remember asking you for help on something. You're like, I love it. And I was like, okay. But this one's a little bit different. If you could go back in time and advise a younger Michelle on anything, and this could be personally or professionally, when would you go back to, and what would you tell her?
I mean, I think that younger Michelle could have used a lot of advice. I think I came up in my career at a time period, in a financial market that was probably very similar to this financial market that we're in right now. And I got laid off a couple of times very early on in my career because of that. So I think, some of the things that I probably would say to younger Michelle is like, your job is not you. Like your worth and your value is not having a job. I think younger Michelle lived in a pre-Obamacare era. So when I graduated from college, it was like, you have to find a job that will give you health insurance within 6 months, or you're not going to have health insurance. And that's like a very real thing to be dealing with. And I'm glad people today don't have that particular challenge. But I think it's very easy to feel like being successful in work looks one particular way. And that's kind of like that financial success, and like having a company that is going to kind of take you somewhere. And what I learned, and what I think eventually brought me to going on this like entrepreneurial journey, is like, you don't have to be bound by those particular constraints. You can choose to say like, I think things could be better, and I'm going to do it my own way, which is, still every day I wake up and do it, a scary thing to do. But I think also there's a component in there that's like, know your worth and what's important to you, and don't be afraid to ask for it. So I think, young Michelle, maybe consider negotiating your salary. Future Michelle will thank you for that. And also, now today, sitting here, like, I still have to work on my negotiating skills. So I think the sooner you can kind of figure that out and like understand what your worth is and not be afraid to ask for it, that's something that anyone could stand to have more of in their life. And it's not always financial, right? Like sometimes it's knowing that you want more flexibility in your career, which is certainly part of the reason that I decided to start my company. Was like, I wanted to be able to have flexibility to spend time with my son, or to live in a different part of the country than where my former employer lived. Nowadays we all have much more remote work options, but at the time that was not necessarily as easy.
Sure, I think that's really good advice. Trusting in yourself and being honest with yourself about what you care about. That remote work piece has been extremely important to me for a really, really long time. And I kept doing jobs that didn't have that and like couldn't figure out why. It wasn't a good fit. And then finally I was like, oh, you do best in your home because you are in gremlin mode for many hours in the morning before you see other humans, and waking up and leaving the house. Like, I'm much more productive if I just walk downstairs, pour my coffee and start work. I don't do like great with like small talk in the morning. So like being in an office environment for me is tricky. It's not that I'm not a personable or friendly human. I'm not a morning person. It's just a fact. So just like really understanding yourself is really, really good advice. Thank you for being on the show today. If anyone listening wants to hang out with me and Michelle, come to TMSA's Executive Summit, which is going to be October 10th through 11th in Hoboken, New Jersey. Registration is now open. So we're getting our final touches on our educational lineup there, but really, really excited for that event. We, of course, just wrapped up Elevate. So taking in all of the surveys, all of the feedback, and seeing where we can go. But if you didn't know, we are headed to Austin, Texas next year for TMSA Elevate. So really excited. And then one more thing that we still have rolling here at TMSA is our Mountain Mover Award. So we announced our Rising Stars and all our Trailblazers and Purpose Award winners already this year, but we still have our Mountain Mover. So if you know a top sales or marketing person in the industry, go ahead and nominate them before August 2nd. That was a mouthful, but like to update all things TMSA. But thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the show and sharing your insight. We really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.